Yeah.
You know what that means? It means it's 6:30 in Newfoundland right now.
That's right.
They don't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that. The math is always confusing when it comes to Newfoundland.
It was.
Yes, exactly.
Has
It's
anybody
always
here
a half
been?
an hour off.
Fitz and I have been to Newfoundland. You must have been to Newfoundland, right, Corey?
That's the only province I've never been to.
Shania's never been to Newfoundland?
Nope.
Have we? We haven't done Newfoundland with Slash, though, have we?
I think we did.
I think we did,
John,
yeah.
But we played with the Trews and Aerosmith, and I think
Oh,
that
I thought that was in Nova Scotia, wasn't it?
somebody online is going to know. They're going to.
I played
gig.
a thing in St. John's, Newfoundland, like a festival type thing in Static and Stereo, like 20 years ago now.
Yeah,
Yes, you did.
there's a
I'm
couple
pretty
good
sure you did
festivals
because
out
my
there,
buddy
yeah.
Sean lives out in Newfoundland, and I think he went to that show. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure you did.
Yeah, you're probably right. It's all a bit of a blur.
It's obviously that memorable. You know.
Well,
You know there's
I will say the people out there are awesome. They like to throw. Well, I mean, I think because so rarely do they get shows that come from other places out there that they sort of take full advantage.
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic place. I've never been, but I want to because it's one of those things that, well, especially coming from the prairies, going, anywhere.
They will drink you under the table, sir.
Well, I'll take my chances. I've been practicing my whole life, so.
I got to quickly point out Darren's shirt. Brent hasn't taken note of it yet. I'm waiting for him to catch on. It's a Sammy Kerr shirt from the film Trick or Treat. It's a
genius.
scary, an 80s horror movie that was heavy metal. I guess remember that in the 80s there was a whole thing about heavy metal being related to the devil and all this nonsense.
And let's not dance around the star of the show, Skippy from Family Ties, who played Ragman.
Yeah, and that's actually his real name is Skippy from Family Ties.
Mark something. What was his last name? Mark something.
I can't remember. I do remember him doing
Mark Price. That's it. Yeah.
Mark Price. Wow, there you go. Wow, I wonder where that guy is. But yeah, Ozzy Osbourne.
Trick or Treat too.
Yeah, exactly. He's been floating that script around for like 30 years. But Ozzy Osbourne played a priest in it, and Gene Simmons played a radio DJ, like a heavy metal DJ. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was fun. And in fact, I might try and convince my wife to sit down and watch that. Here's something that was out when you were an infant. Yeah.
I make my wife watch it once a week, so she falls asleep all the time, but I still put it on.
Yeah, you just got to turn it up louder. That's all.
Exactly. So how's everybody doing? We're no Shane today. Shane is preoccupied, so he's
away.
He's away. Yeah.
In another.
He seems to be away a lot. That guy. He's always he's jet setting these days. Good for him.
He is.
Yeah.
He is.
And on that note, how's everything down for you guys? We're going back into restrictions as of 12 o'clock tonight.
So rainbows here.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's all rainbows. In fact, Biden just announced the releasing of the masks, the mask wearing outdoors if you're vaccinated.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So if you're vaccinated, you have to, or you don't have to?
You don't have to wear a mask outside if you're vaccinated.
Now, is that mandatory if you're not right now?
Well, it is, but I mean, there's no way they can really police it.
Yeah.
But it's expected, I suppose.
Okay, yeah, because I don't think it's actually like mandatory here, but it's encouraged to do so. But yeah. So here's the new rules that they put in place here. This is the best. As of tomorrow, I can't have any single person I know on my patio, but I can go to a restaurant and sit on a patio with 3 strangers. Explain that. I don't know, but I guess they're trying, maybe to boost business. I don't know, but
that's the hard part right now. Is it's like you have to do what you can to keep these businesses open. It's going to be rough trying to bounce back from all this. So
yeah, exactly. Well, as a business owner, I'm just going to license my patio and then I'll stay.
There you go.
So yeah.
There you go.
Brent, you're doing something exciting today. Where are you? Or is that something you can talk about?
I'm doing nothing. I've just been very bad. I've been banished to this corner, dark room in this scary house. No. Well, I am in
Nashville. Now?
I know, right? So I'm just doing a little recording here, and so I just snuck away
somewhere.
Just to back up a couple days too. I actually got to play a little bit in.
Oh, that's right. I want to talk about.
We were going to go to that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm doing a little playing today, and I was doing a little playing on the weekend, so I'm pretty fired up. Yeah, I played an outdoor gig in Phoenix with Alice Cooper and friends. It was
Never heard of him.
A golf tournament. So everything was outside. The stage
Cool.
was outside. The people were outside, and fairly distanced in everyone. But generally speaking, there wasn't a mandatory mask situation, and I don't want to comment other than it was really great to play with some people and play some music outside with, the chance to, instead of just, playing to a screen or something. Yeah, we actually had an audience.
So who was all there? It was Tommy Thayer from Kiss, Lou Graham from Foreigner, and I saw Damon Johnson, ex Alice Cooper, brother Kane, bunch of the Alice Cooper guys, Chuck Garrick. Who else was there?
Yeah. Our buddy Frank Sidoris from Slash.
Frank Sidoris, of course, the head conspirator.
Yeah, and Alice's son Dashiell is a singer, so his band played, and a whole bunch of great. Well, Alice and his wife Cheryl have a really great, and it's been going for many years now. The Alice Cooper's Solid Rock Foundation, which really is about supporting teenagers and giving them a place to go and be creative, dance, music, art, and so it's all through that organization that they raise a lot of money. And then, have a golf tournament. So, which is also a good thing to do outside, which,
did you get out and golf?
So I didn't. I was gonna,
Brent,
but I came out here on.
Brent had a golf phase there for a while. Didn't you get into golf for a minute there?
I liked it because it was outdoors and, get a little exercise and fresh air. And then I realized it's really hard. It's a terrible sport because it really can get you.
Yeah,
you think you're getting good, and then you're
crazy,
just like,
dude.
So.
It's so funny how it makes people crazy because they're like, you can never be good enough, or it's always. I guess it's part of the fun of like, well, I'll do better tomorrow. You can wake up and go do it again, kind of thing. Yeah, but I've known people who just drives them crazy.
I'm really great at sinking my club into the grass.
No, I think I'm surprised, Corey, because I do play hockey with you, and you're a great hockey player, and I think the hockey leads to the golf. Like there's a little bit of, you got to have some skills.
It depends how you do in the playoffs, am I right?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Here's the strange thing, though. I actually golf opposite of what I shoot in hockey.
Oh, interesting. Are you left-handed hockey?
I shoot left, but I golf right.
As do I.
I'm right both ways.
Darren, what
I
you
think
say?
I'm with you on that.
I'm the same.
Yeah.
I shoot left hockey, golf, and right-handed golf too.
Okay.
That might be
I'm
pretty
right-handed.
normal,
I'm
actually.
right-handed both ways. That's interesting.
You're right all the time, Todd.
Except I'm terrible at both sports, so there's that.
So how many people were invited to be part of that, Brent? Like, was it a socially distanced thing? I saw some of the photos, but I mean, it looked like they were kind of, is it?
Yeah.
What
Well,
was the live scene like?
All the people out front were in tables, but spread out. And then they had a whole crowd of people at the back. But I have to say it was very inspiring because it was well done. And I'm confident that the people that were there were respectful of, space and everything. But there was a way to have a great outdoor thing, musically and charity and whatnot. And people should take note that we could probably do some more of those pretty soon.
Alice is such a huge part of the Phoenix community that way. He's always doing something. Like at Christmas time, he does something, and in the summertime, he does something, usually, if he's around, to do charity work and benefit stuff.
And I'm sure it's common knowledge, too. We talk about golf, but he's an amazing golfer now, too.
Yeah.
I mean, just
Yeah.
unbelievable.
Scratch golfer. He's incredible. Now, one of the things he did mention to me that is great to talk on Took Talk is that the golf course that we were on, which is La Sendas in Mesa, just, one of the suburbs of Phoenix, owned by Canadians. All of the houses surrounding the golf course, all Canadians.
All from Winnipeg.
Everybody in
All
this
from
area.
Winnipeg, right?
Yeah, probably.
Amazing.
Well, I was staying with my friend Peter from Winnipeg that lives in Phoenix. So
There you go.
yeah, there are a lot of Canadians and Winnipeggers, a lot of Albertans I met.
Is that Peter, our mutual friend?
Andronic
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. What's interesting though is, one of the most common conversations was the quarantine, the border crossing, and, everybody's got a story about, well, I just never, if you were stuck down in the States, you just never went back home, or, they were asking me how, because I went last year back, as you know, Darren, up to Winnipeg and
A couple
was looking
times.
after my parents.
Yeah.
So that's basically the topic of conversation is always, crossing borders and how to, quarantine safely and that. So, yeah. And it's not getting easier because now there's that mandatory 3-day government approved, what is it? Hotel?
Yeah. My daughter had to do that. It's brutal.
Really?
Yeah. You can't really pick the hotel. They go, you're staying here and you got to pay for it yourself kind of thing. It's brutal.
Right.
But there's light at the end of the tunnel. We're heading into the other side of it now. So that's good.
And on that note, I mean, lots to talk about, but obviously our guest this week has more than lots to talk about because he's been involved with more things than any of us could probably count. So I think it's probably best that we bring him on because, I mean, we probably got a load of stories in tow here. So Corey, we'll put it to you to do the intro today.
All right, we got a really big shoe for sure.
A really big shoe.
So our guest today, I met on my first Shania tour. He was brought in to mix the show by Mutt Lange himself and stayed for decades. We've been friends that long. He's from Manchester, England. And he started working at the ripe old age of 17 back in 75. So you do the math.
Wow.
He's really old now.
Baby, don't talk like that.
He started as a tape op and he worked his way up the ranks to assistant engineer, mix engineer, producer, and has had an amazing career working with people like Def Leppard, of course. We're going to talk all about that today. He was around there for Pyromania and Hysteria, and after even. So that's pretty cool. He worked with Bryan Adams on Waking Up the Neighbors, recorded all of that. He worked way back with the Cult back in the day. He's mixed stuff for Britney Spears, The Corrs, Iron Maiden, 4 albums with Iron Maiden, The Scorpions, AC/DC, Extreme, Ronnie James Dio.
The Cars? Was that in there?
The Cars, The Outfield, A Flock of Seagulls, Billy Ocean, the Backstreet Boys, Katrina and the Waves, and tons more. So, without
it'd be hilarious after all this if he wasn't there when we went.
He's like, that intro was way too long.
He's just like, laugh.
Yeah. Well, he's probably sold. He's probably gone to the bathroom like 3 or 4 times within that intro. No, I'm just giving him a hard time. I always do. He's one of the most humble people you'll ever meet. And he's one of my very best friends. Please welcome to Toque Talk, Mr. Nigel Green.
Yeah.
Hey.
Nigel,
Hi,
first
Corey.
question. Nigel, first question. Man City or Man United?
Man United.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
I
You know,
was,
it's so...
like 3 miles away from the field, so it wasn't that far.
There you go. I actually never really knew the difference as a kid. I just knew, and I remember like
But
playing.
Man City was shit, and Man United was great.
Well, that's the difference. That's the difference. There it is.
So this is a football thing, I'm assuming.
Soccer, yeah, football.
Soccer
I remember
here, yeah.
I was playing a gig, and there's some guys in the audience getting rowdy, and they're from Manchester. We started going, Man United, Man United. And they were like, no. They got really angry at us, and I was like, whoa, what? Turned out they were Man City. I learned that lesson very, very loudly. So
very
now I ask that every time. It's super tribal. I like the Oasis guys. The Oasis guys are like Man City, and they don't even want to talk about anything else.
Exactly, and you're literally like not many miles away from each other, and it's like this or that. It's crazy.
I wouldn't, and they're both in the same league. Is that how that works? Like they both?
Yeah, they're both in the Premiership.
So you have one city that'd be like like the Vancouver Canucks playing the Vancouver somethings. It's like
Well, remember CFL, we had 2 teams named the Rough Riders. I mean, we only had 6 teams in the league, so I mean,
the Rough Riders are really sticking into these Rough Riders.
Well, it was the Rough Riders and
And then the Rough Riders. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, thanks for cleaning. Thanks for clarifying that.
And to join Nigel's logic in this, it's because the Ottawa Rough Riders were shit. See,
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Anyway,
No, okay, we got that out of the way. Now we can talk about the important things. Yeah,
That's funny. We normally talk about hockey. We went to footy. Yeah.
we immediately went to football. Exactly, the most popular sport in the world, but we don't seem to talk about it ever in North America.
Right.
Funny.
Well, they're getting into it here. It's pretty big in schools and all that, and
It always is, yeah.
It's hard to compete with the world teams because, Man United, Juventus, and all these teams, they're just like the same amount of money that the NFL spends. So you have an American team, and it's not gonna. You know what I mean? It's not gonna win in the World Cup
unless they got someone like David Beckham on their team. Then they can't lose. Wait, did that work? Did that ever work? I don't know if that ever worked. Yeah.
You just did something to your mic.
Really loud there,
loud.
Todd. Your mic got really super loud and it's distorting like crazy.
Oh, well, I wanted to do that on purpose.
And Nigel's about ready to pull out his hair because he can't find the mixing board to fix it.
Is that better?
No.
Is that better?
I don't know what happened. It was just, very strange.
Well, I'll turn this down to...
Just start playing with knobs.
Is that better?
Play with your knobs. Go to the cam mic settings.
Yes.
And then go to audio. Sorry about this, everybody.
No, this is they love this stuff.
And
this is planned because we, it's all. Audio.
I'll go to the toilet. I'll be back.
Oh, there you go.
Try automatically adjust mic volume. Is that checked?
Where the hell do you see that? There it is. Okay. Automatically adjust. Okay, I'll just turn myself down. Is that better?
It's still distorting though, so I wonder if you should just plug and unplug it.
Weird.
Maybe.
It's not any better. Okay.
Nigel really did go off to the bathroom.
Yeah. Hang on, I'm going to unplug and plug it in.
Yeah. Okay.
When in doubt, knock it out.
Yeah. Oh, and there goes the flush.
That was great.
This is like the scene from what was that? Naked Gun when he.
Yeah, I have to tell you guys a story. Yeah, that was awesome, Nigel. We heard the flush and everything. So, Nigel, I don't know if you remember Hardy Hemphill was the keyboard player in the Shania band, and he told us this story one time. He told us the story that they were in rehearsals and they all had headset mics on. And one of the girls, they took a break, and one of the girls went to the bathroom. She forgot to turn off her wireless pack and her headset, so she was in the bathroom with her microphone on, and you hear go, tinkle, 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 and then you hear the flush, and then you hear, oh my God, please go down, please go down. Please go down.
Didn't that happen down like some member of parliament or something, a mayor of some? I saw that on the internet a couple months ago. It was some U.S. state. A guy did the same thing, walked away and had his mic on, and needless to say, it was.
It happens.
When I used to do the original, the first tour, I mean, Shania was on for 2.5 hours, I think. I get really anxious. I keep going before the show started. I just go to the toilet just in case, because once you're out there, you're screwed.
Yeah, it's a long show. You gotta be well drained before you start.
Todd, did we get you back, or are you still?
Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Now it's your laptop mic.
Now it's the internal mic. Keep going. Do your thing. I'll figure it out.
Okay.
Yeah, just okay. So anyway, Nige, we got you here. It's awesome. Thanks for joining us. And I wanted to ask you about I know a lot about you, but I don't know exactly how you got into being in the recording industry. So you were 17, and what did you just have a studio in town? Or?
Full disclosure, I'm not a musician. I can't sing. I don't write music. So everyone used to say in Manchester, how do you get in the music industry? I mean, you don't play an instrument. I go, well, it's a bit like the film industry. There's a lot of people there. They're not actors, they're behind the scenes and all that. And my brother was a musician, and he got a record deal in 1975 in London with Charisma Records. And so I left school at 16. So I'm not going to college. So I get some kind of job there, and I'm messing around with Alan. He's got a 4-track tape machine, and I'm doing his demos. And anyhow, he gets a recording contract, and it's just for a single, not an album. And he goes to Morgan Studios in London, and he phones me up and he says, come down, Nige, check it out. It's the real world, And so on the weekend, I drove down and went in there, and I was watching the session, and they were doing string overdubs. It was a ballad that he was doing, and I was going, this is cool. It's like like it's amazing, it's like the real world. And so I was there for the weekend, and Martin Levan, he became a very famous, he was a top engineer there, but he became a very famous person who designed sound for designed sound for all the theater stuff for Andrew Lloyd Webber. He did all the all around the world, and nice guy. And I talked to him, he's the engineer on it. How'd you get a job in a place like this? And he said, well, it's kind of funny, really. Actually, we are going to be looking for someone. And he said, Chris Tangarides, I don't know if you know who he is. He's a famous producer. Chris Tangarides did Judas Priest,
yes, I know
him. I've actually got some notes here so I can remember. So what is it? Yeah, he did Gary Moore, Tigers of Pang Tang. He did. Ingwe Malmsteen.
Oh, nice.
So he
I have all those records.
Well into that hard rock stuff, but he was the tape op, and he was being promoted to engineer. And they said we need someone to, replace him. So he said, give us your information. We'll put your name in the hat, and we'll let you know. So I go back home, and a week later, I get the phone call and said, well, if you want the job, you start on Monday.
Wow.
So I had to quit my job that I was doing. I had to tell them that, I was getting a really good wage at this job.
Well, what were you doing?
It was crazy. I ended up working for the Daily Mirror, publishing, like the newspapers. Mm-hmm. And I was a messenger, but, I was like a runner. And then somehow my mom knew someone there, and they got me a union card. And it was all about getting a union card. And this is before, and the job I got was in the library department. I think the guy I replaced retired. It was like such a boring job, but actually it was paid great money, And so I go into them a week. I said I'm going to quit, and they said, oh, really? Giving up your union card. So what are you going to do? I'm going to London to work in a studio, and I'm going to get paid a quarter of the price I get paid here. I'm going to work 4 times the hours that I work here. And the guy's looking at me going, God, you kids are stupid. And so anyhow, that's what I did. I went down. I had this banger of a car, Vauxhall Viva. It was rusty, so I painted it. I actually painted it with a brush. It's like navy blue. When you're 17, you think this is cool, And so I drive down to London and stay with my brother, who's in South London in Putney, and I had to get to North West London in Willesden, where Morgan Studios was, and it's only like 5 miles, but it's like 45 minutes in the traffic. And my car was a bit dodgy. The first few days I was working with Mark Levan. The first thing I worked on was a string section. And it was like, holy shit, it's like, and like within that day, he had me editing the multi-track tape and all that. I couldn't do anything else. I knew nothing. I knew nothing. And I think the third day I arrived. I didn't arrive late. You're meant to, as a tape op, you're meant to do everything. You're meant to be there 2 hours before the session. You're meant to, the engineers in those days were, very successful, almost not superstars, but they were. And they wanted tape ops who would just set everything up. If it was a string section, all the mics, everything, everything set up, patched up into the mixing console, all written down and all the routing done, everything. So that if the engineer didn't turn up, you could actually do the session without him. And so I arrived late for this big like 60-piece orchestra thing. It wasn't late. I was like half an hour, but you're meant to be 2 hours before. And they just looked at me and said, look, if you can't arrive on time, don't even bother coming tomorrow. So I'm going, oh shit, I'm going to get fired, And I went home. These are sessions. You'd start at 10 and you'd finish at 12, and you do another session from 1 to 5. They're all structured, and, everything's 3 hour. And so I wasn't doing anything after that. I went home, and Alan told her, and he was great. He gave me money to get a deposit on a car so I could go to a dealership that night and buy something that I wouldn't break down. I could arrive on time. So I had this new car. Well, it wasn't new; it was secondhand. And
That's
I
amazing.
arrived there, and I'm on thin ice now. You know, it's like it's only a matter of time.
Back
So
to the
they put
Daily
me-
Mirror with you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So they go back with my tail between my legs, and so they put me with the chief engineer, Roger Quested, who he's known for Quested speakers. He did very well, but at the time he was one of the top guys, and he was the guy who was going to whip you into shape. You know, if you could get past Roger, then you got the job. And so it was another orchestra session again, and I'm going, oh shit, you know. I mean, so I get there 2 hours before, which I should do, and it's all set up, and I'm going, you know, because the engineers used to pitch up like 20 minutes before the session started, and everything's set up for them. You give them the tea, they have a newspaper, and you know, it's like. And it's all set up, and I'm going, wow, did he come in before me? And he didn't. He set it up the night before, but he did it himself, which is unheard of. Roger Quested would never do anything like this. And anyhow, he does come in early, and I'm just sitting there twiddling my thumbs. And he just like, he looks at me and he goes, man, I finished the session last night, and I set everything up. I never do this, but I knew I was working with you, and you knew nothing. And I just left one thing for you to do. I'm just going, what? And he said, the headphones. You didn't put any headphones over. So it was like 30, you know, whatever it was, whatever the instrumentation was. And I run downstairs and putting these headphones on, boxes, and plugging them in. And all that day, he was like, ripping me, you know. It's like, yeah, because the thing was, I did send a picture to Corey about the first tape recorder we were using. So we're doing 16 track in those days,
Right.
and this machine was called a 3M M79 or whatever it was.
We'll show a picture of it here.
Yeah, and
It's the one with the
there
six.
it
Yeah,
is.
that's it.
Yeah, that was my hell hole. So that was, I mean, this machine sounded amazing. It sounded better than anything, you know, than Studer and all that. But the transport was really, really vicious. And if it wasn't set up correctly, it could, you know, suddenly the tape would be spooled. It's like going on the floor. No. And then if it gained its tension again, it would pull back and snap and almost stretch it. So you always had to have someone, a tape op, in charge of it.
Yeah.
And in those days, everything was moving so fast with musicians. The engineer didn't have time. You know, that didn't really have a proper remote, but you wouldn't trust it. If that was in another room and you look back and the tape's all over the floor, you know, it's like, so, you know, the tape op, that's where the tape op came from. And, you know, the main thing was to operate, make, you know, wind back, punch in, etc. And it was so funky, you know, it didn't, you know, it had a counter, but it would always slip. So, you know, if you do one take and they say, keep it, you know, you couldn't rely on the counter. So you get this Chinograph marker thing and you'd mark it to say, you know, if you see that, you don't go past there because you can erase the song before, you know.
Oh.
Because you do a take and you couldn't afford to just keep everything. The tape was expensive. You have to wind back and do it again. And so it was very... and also what happened was, because the engineer was divorced from that, you had the communication with the producer, and the producer would start saying, you know, second verse, bunch in after 2 bars, you know, for a couple of bars where he says this. And so the great thing about it was I was thrown in at the deep end. My first priority was not to get fired. And that meant you had to be as good as all the other tape ops there. They were all experienced. So I realized with Roger, what I did, we had these books that we'd write, you know, we'd do sessions and we'd write, oh, I worked from 9 to 12 on string section with so-and-so, write it. And this is all to make sure I got paid correctly. You know, they kind of trusted the tape ops to give them, you know. And I said, you know, oh, shit, you know. So I used the back of the book and I said, right, I'm going to write everything down that all the engineers expect and need. So Roger Quested, string section. I knew already to use Schertz mics, which was a German model. Most people use Neumann 87s, 47s, 84s. He hated Schertz. He hated Neumann. So he had these Schertz that were for the violins and violas, and they used C12s, which was like the power pack, or the tube version of the 414 for the cello and the bass. And so I wrote it all down. I knew exactly what Roger would use. Martin Levan was different. It was 87s for violins, violas, and cello would be 47s. And then the drum kit would be the drum kit. Roger would mic every tom separately, but again, no Neumanns. I can't remember what he was using for toms. Karak for snare, not for C12s for cymbals. But Martin Levan, it would be U87s. But one thing, so when you're 16 track, it's like nothing. So you can really only use 5 tracks for drums.
Wow.
So it was like kick, snare, and then stereo kit, which would be toms and cymbals, and then hi-hat. And, it's kind of funny. I was thinking, now, why did they separate the hi-hat, really? Was it that important? But, I suppose disco was around at the time as well. So that was kind of you needed to EQ it and get it a certain way. Mike Boback, who did all the Rod Stewart stuff, he just used four tracks. So when you think about it, 5 tracks, then you put a bass down at 6. Then you've got a stereo Rhodes or some sort of keyboard thing. So that's 7, 8. You're halfway through.
Yeah, exactly. Wow.
Yeah,
then you got 2
almost
guitars,
no tracks. I mean, considering that
guitars,
you have
it's 10.
unlimited tracks now.
Yeah,
and in the old days it was 16.
Yeah, so you got the vocal, it's 11. You want background vocals, it's 13, 14. You've only got 2 tracks left.
So was there a great deal of bouncing going on in that world?
Totally, yeah. Well, you had to get the drum sound the way it should be, because there's nothing you could do with. Yeah. I mean, there was a funny story with Roger. It's like, because engineers were very, technical, and they came from that area. And a lot of the times producers came from the music side, and they didn't understand all the nowadays it's all merged. Everyone kind of knows everything. And Roger was, saying, well, we don't have any tracks left to do this last thing. And the guy gets a £50 note and goes, you can find me a track. And he said, okay, I'll just raise the vocal then, So anyhow, but yeah, so the funny thing is, going from 16, and then we had 2 studios with 24 track. So you can imagine another 8 tracks. It was like, wow.
Of course, yeah.
Luxury, And I was saying to Corey before, it's amazing how as technology got, they wanted more tracks. They never went past 24 tracks on analog. But it changed the way recording was done. So, in the days I was doing these sessions, it was sessions, and it would be a 3-hour session. You'd get three songs done in 3 hours, the backing track, and then you have lunch, and then the afternoon you do overdubs, like background vocals, maybe fix the vocal or do the vocal again. And you might, if it needs strings, you probably you wouldn't mix it that. If it didn't need strings, you'd probably mix it that night. So you get 3 songs done in a day. If you need strings, then you book the strings the next morning, and the brass in the afternoon, and then so everything was really quick, and it's amazing. I mean, the other thing about it is, it was saying, in those days, I never went to college, but like nobody went to college. It's like in these things, it was all about trade. So you went to college if you were a doctor or a nurse or a lawyer, but you didn't go to college to go in the studios. You just worked. You just got your foot in the door and worked with them. And
right.
Yeah. So you must have had a lot of stressful moments in the beginning, learning the ropes. And was there any holy shit moments?
No. Well, it was all holy shit for the first 2 weeks. It was like, how the hell am I going to survive? But the beauty is
like recording over something and going, oh my god, I just recorded over.
No. That was the thing.
That's amazing.
just no. I mean, no, you can't have that, you know. But the point is they realized I was trying, and that was the key. You know, they go,
Right.
well, at least he's trying. And
Right.
so in the end, I actually got good. I could set everything up for everyone, and then that's when I considered myself useful.
How long did it take before? How long does it take before you've kind of got it? Like before they started giving you a hard time?
4 weeks.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
That's pretty good.
No, because basically, you know, they're not going to have you hanging around if you can't get it together. You know? Yeah.
Of course, yeah.
And so, how many years did you do that before you got your first like big sort of gig?
Well, like I said, the beauty is within 6 months, if the engineer didn't pitch up, I could record the session. I wouldn't necessarily know how to balance it or mix it. You know, I could balance it, but I wouldn't be a mixing expert or anything like that. But I knew I could record it, and
Right.
I think I was there 2.5 years, and I did an Andrew Lloyd Webber thing. It was an album, and it was "Tell Me on a Sunday," and it was like, it's, you know, Andrew Lloyd Webber at that time. You could have sang "Three Blind Mice," and it would have gone in the, you know, like that, whatever. So I actually got a hit. So, but I didn't count it because it was Andrew Lloyd Webber. And like I said, we could have done anything.
So this was
But
this was
cool.
all at Morgan Studios?
Yeah, Morgan Studios, yeah. And the first hit I had after that was this guy called Jonah Louie. I just left Morgan, and he was with Stiff Records, and it was called "Stop the Cavalry," and it was it was a pop song, and you know, it got number 3 or something. So, but you know, the weirdest thing is, in those days, I mean, so you know, to explain the studios in London, then it was a small business in the sense that there was probably 20 studios. When I say 20 studios, 20 companies. We had 4 studios at Morgan. You know, Abbey Road had 3, I think, and Olympic had 2. And but there would be like 20 studios that were doing all the records in the charts in England and everything. And so the amazing thing about it is, pretty much all the time you were working on something that was well known. You know, like for instance, I did write stuff down. So you had Olympic Studios, which is Rolling Stones, The Who, Zeppelin, Glyn Johns was there, Jimi Hendrix Experience and all that. Abbey Road, we know, was the Beatles. Pink Floyd did Dark Side of the Moon. Basing Street was Chris Blackwell, who had Island Records, and it was Bob Marley, all the Bob Marley stuff. And U2, they groomed U2, Steve Winwood, Robert Palmer, Grace Jones. And those Bob Marley records, I listen to them now, they sound amazing. I mean, they still sound great. So you had Wessex Studios, which is where Mike Shipley was. That was Queen, The Pretenders, Sex Pistols, The Clash. So you had producers like Roy Thomas Baker, Mike Stone, Chris Thomas, and Bill Price was the engineer. You got Air Studios, which was where George Martin used to do the Beatles. He broke from EMI, and he said he had 3 different studios, but one of them was at Oxford Circus, and that was Paul McCartney, Roxy Music, Dire Straits. And then we got Trident, was the cool one. That was Tony Visconti, and he did T-Rex. And eventually David Bowie was, you know, and Elton John with Gus Dudgeon and that. So the studio I was in was Morgan, and all Rod Stewart stuff was done there. Maggie May onwards, all Cat Stevens stuff, and Jethro Tull, Yes, Topographic Ocean, Thin Lizzy, you know. So it was, you know, it was amazing. And then Mickey Most used to do all. Mickey Most was this producer in England at the time. Was like, you know, like the equivalent of Mutt Lange later, but you know, in the early days.
Right.
And he had his own record label, Records, and he did the Animals, House of the Rising Sun, and you know, we're doing Susie Quattro.
Nice.
And
what was her name on Happy Days? Is that
Leather Tuscadero.
Leather Tuscadero, that was it, yeah.
So, and Hot Chocolate, and the cool thing about Mickey Most, he used to just come in and do singles. He never really took the studio out to do an album or anything. So it was always instant, and within 2 weeks you'd hear it in the charts.
Amazing. Okay, so let's fast forward now to when you first met Mutt. How did you get to work with Mutt? Was it at Morgan or?
Yeah, so Morgan had 4 studios, and it's kind of funny, because so Morgan's heyday was before I got there. It was still doing really well when I was there, but it was the 70s when all this stuff with Cat Stevens and, Jethro Tull was doing an album when I was there, and Peter Gabriel did an album there, but a lot of the big stuff that, all the Rod Stewart stuff was done earlier. And it's a fashion business. You're as good as your last record, and Morgan, and they all had this reputation of having these artists there. But punk came along and wiped that out in a day. It was literally, we were standing outside the studio going, Sex Pistols signed 3 different record contracts in 1 week. I think it was EMI and then A&M, and they got kicked off the label each.
That's right.
They ended up with Virgin Records.
That's right.
And we were going, and every time they got kicked off, it's because they went into went into Abbey Road Studios and kind of tried to trash it. They had fire extinguishers going off in the room. They said, "Fuck this, you're gone," and it was an image thing. It was Malcolm McLaren, the manager, and it was, we're sitting there going, we're not part of that. We don't have any punk going on there. And all we realized was overnight, Elton John, Rod Stewart, Queen, gone. You couldn't get arrested on the radio station. It was all the Clash, Sex Pistols, the Jam. It was just like a whole new thing had changed overnight. And we were going, where does that put us? As a studio. And the studio kind of started going down a bit. And we had rumors that they were going to sell one of the studios. And we didn't believe it. We got, fine, it's just a rumor. But they were. And they sold Studio 4 to Zomba, which is Clive Calder, and that's Mutt used to work, was part of the Zomba thing. They managed him, and he was, part of the whole thing. And so they sold the studio, and Mike Shipley and Mutt, Mike Shipley and Mutt looked at the studio, and then Mutt, they decided you should have this. And so Mike Shipley's there, and he's the main engineer, the only guy. And there's Joyce Moore, who was the studio manager of Wessex, where he came from. And she became the studio manager. They called it Battery Studios. It was Studio 4 for Morgan, but it was Studio 1 for Battery. And I was sent over there just to show them, the ropes where everything was, because it was part of more, they had to use our maintenance guy. And I just went out, and they didn't even have a tape of or anything. And
so Mutt and Mike were already working together at this point.
No, they weren't. No,
they weren't. Okay.
They had at Wessex, but he wasn't engineering from. Tony Platt was working with Mutt as an engineer at the time.
And Mutt had already done AC/DC and.
No, he'd done Highway to Hell.
Sure.
But then Highway to Hell was with Neil Kernan, and then Tony Platt did Back in Black with Mutt at Compass Point. So I go over there to show them, well, here's the tea, here's the coffee, the cups are there, all the important stuff, and they don't have a tape up. So I start working with Mike, because the amazing thing about Zomba was Clive and Ralph, and Clive was a genius. They could sell ice cream to Eskimos. So this studio that they sold it wasn't even a third full. It was empty most of the time. So Morgan, the graphics, as soon as Zomba got it, it was they had 3 bands waiting to get into that.
Wow.
And of course, Mike was the engineer, and it was solid work. So I ended up working with Mike. And then after a few weeks, we got on great. And, Mike was brilliant. I mean, I worked with some great engineers, Mine Levan, and, Roger Questy was great. And there was, Mike Bobek, but Mike was it was a different thing, and it was a new thing to learn, and his standards were really high, and you just wanted to, he just encouraged you to, so it was great. We got on great, and they offered me a job, And I saw what was going on the organ. I thought, well, it's like diving over there. So I jumped over to Zomba, and that's how we met Mutt. Eventually, Mutt comes in and doing a project with Tony Platt. And
Which project was that?
oh God, it was. I think the name was Dickon, but I can't.
Interesting. Huh.
It wasn't something that was a massive hit, but it was the first engagement with Mutt, and so that was
Okay.
So like
Now
so you got your Mike Shipley, you got the bar up there, and you're going, oh, and then Mutt comes and it's where did the bar go?
It's out of sight.
Right.
Yeah, so
That's amazing. So then, how long before you started doing the first Def Leppard thing with Mutt?
well, it was High and Dry. I was on High and Dry as a
Wow.
tape-off.
That's a good one.
Okay.
Mm.
And tape op is also synonymous with assistant engineer, is it?
Yeah. So originally, like I said, the tape-op, I was operating. They didn't have remotes, and they called you the tape-op, but you did everything. You set everything.
You
up.
patched the patch bay and you set up mics and
Everything, but the idea was you were operating the tape machine, punching in and all that. As
Right.
it got later on, you had Studer machines that were much more accurate, and you could, as an engineer, use a remote. You didn't need the tape op to be. In the early days, that machine I showed you was kind of like pretty out.
right. And you were saying that good tape ops could actually know by how fast it was spun, how
yeah.
far to rewind back.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You needed to
you're
go
doing
10
it-
seconds, you go, okay, that's it, 10 seconds, just by the
you'd-
feel of it.
Yeah, you'd be on the machine all the time. It was just like anything. It's I mean that. Yeah,
Like go back to the first course, you would know how to get there without any.
Actually, what we did with that, we did put a bit of code with Chinagraph. You do it a certain way, chorus, verse, But most of the time, in those days, you weren't really punching in as much as you were once you got into the 80s, which
Right.
then you're punching in beats and syllables and things. But then it was more like, so it wasn't so. But I mean.
Okay. That's really cool. So let's talk about working with the Leopards.
Yeah, there was like,
Leo-
Leopard.
everything.
Yeah.
Tell us everything.
that's Pete Willis in the band. That's Rick's got both arms at the time. It's a whole different Def Leppard at that time. Yeah.
Yeah,
Very young man.
High and and High and Dry. It was them in the studio, Battery, and Mike was doing it, and I was tape hopping, and And at the time, I was starting to get because Clive, he bought in. He's a publishing, and he wanted to start a production company. He already managed producers. We had Martin Birch, Tony Platt, Tim Freeze Green, Mutt. Who else? Anyhow, but the idea was for them eventually to start a record company, which became Jive Records. So, Clive wanted a studio available for him when he wanted it, but he didn't want it to be locked up. And
Right.
Mutt always had this reputation of taking a long time on records. And I think when Pyromania happened, they started at Battery, but it was pretty obvious it was going to take maybe a year. So Clive just wanted access to the studio. And so I think there was an agreement. Mutt decided to go to Hastings Battle. There was a studio called Parkgate Studios. And he recorded the guitars there himself with engineers there. And that freed Battery 1 up. And I was doing some stuff in Battery 2 now. They bought the second studio.
I had a question
And,
that we were talking about a little bit last week. We all know that Jim Steinman passed away last Tuesday on the show.
Oh, boy.
And we all know that you were involved in Def Leppard's biggest album to date, Hysteria, if not one of the biggest records of the decade. And if it's not common knowledge, it will be today that, and correct me if I'm wrong on my information here, but from what I understand, Mutt was kind of taking a break just due to exhaustion. He'd probably been overly worked, and they brought in Jim Steinman as the original producer on that album. Were you in the room on that? Did you get to hear on that?
No.
Because I've read interviews with Joe Elliott that says that will never see the light of day, and I was just curious to know if you were.
Neil Dorfman. He did the Dire Straits. Great engineer.
Oh, okay.
No,
Wow.
so Yeah, the whole thing was Mutt, so from High and Dry, and then on Pyromania, Mutt decided to put drums on last, which, you go, what? And so, but it was about having the ability to change, because they wrote while in the studio. So they wanted to change things. If they thought the chorus could be better, they just right, we'll do like you can. I did an article on this on their site, and now you can do that with Pro Tools easily. You can just change the middle eight or whatever. But you couldn't do that if you put the drums down first. Like you normally do, then you're kind of stuck with the arrangement. You can't really change it. And he wanted that ability to change, and so Pyromania was done that way, and it became a great success. That when Hysteria happened, they wanted to do it the same way. But the problem is, I did this Cars album with Mutt, and that took a year. Everything seemed to take a year. And
City?
Yeah,
Heartbeat City,
and Mutt was I was burnt out. We were all burnt out. And Mutt was burnt out, and he made a decision then that he wasn't going to do the Def Leppard album, which, because he'd literally before I even started in the studio business, he did the Boomtown Rats. I was still at school, and that was going #1 and all that. He was doing amazing stuff then. So he constantly worked, and there was always another project ready to go. He never took time off. So he decided he wasn't going to do the next Hysteria.
I bet he's glad he did.
Well, yeah. Well, he's instrumental in a lot of the success. So the thing. So
well,
the thing
I'm
is,
curious to know how that would have turned out without him. That has just been one of those albums that is just almost like a signature sound, right?
The Jim Steinman chapter adds to the entire length of that process, because they clearly tried to make the record in one, and then
probably the length of the songs too. I bet you I Pour Some Sugar of Me would have been like 12 minutes. It's like
let me sleep on it. Pour some sugar. Let me sleep on it.
So anyhow, the whole thing was Steinman wanted them to just go in the studio and bang it out, and they never did. Even High and Dry, we were putting the drums down first, and that was the human click sort of thing. He was like he's just like hilarious.
He was clapping.
Wait, so
he was listening
Nigel,
to a click, but
there was no click track. There was no real click track, or
well, there was, but he was in a vocal booth listening to a click, and he's going 1, 2, 3, and verse 2, 3, and it's like, so he was like trying to make a click track with a vibe, so that the drummer would not just sort of become this metronome. He wanted them and push 2, 3, and
So conducting in a sense.
Conducting, yes, exactly. He was the conductor. So it was
that's quite
hilarious.
interesting and fascinating. Cool.
Yeah. So that was done that way. So all the albums they did with Mutt were done in this strange way. It wasn't them going in the studio and banging it down. And Jim Steinman wanted to do that, and they were going, well, we don't do it that way.
Wow.
So they realized after, I think it was 6 months, I don't know what it was, and they said, no, this isn't working. So Clive, I was doing stuff for Jive and all that, and Mutt, and they said, oh, send Nigel over there. And I was under the impression that I was going there to mix it and do some vocal overdubs. I didn't think I was going over there to produce an album. And it appeared that there wasn't many tracks available. It was like 3 tracks, and it wasn't even that great, And it was like, oh, shit. So technically I was over my, beyond my capabilities. And we struggled for a while. We were trying to beef the guitars up and things, but still to a click track. And then, terribly, Rick had the accident, lost his arm. We went back for Christmas, and I read on the newspaper, I'm flying back on January the 2nd, I think, picture of Rick, lose his arm, and I'm going, what? And we didn't have cell phones in those days, so I had no contact with anyone. I just flew to Whistle Lord Studios in Holland, and nobody.
What are we looking at here, Nigel? Is this
that's
one of the
Ireland? So The studio, they did it in 2 studios. They did it in Windmill Lane in Ireland, and well, they did it in 3 studios. But they were doing it in Whistleord with Jim Steinman, and I went there, and then Rick had the accident, and then we went to Paris to do more work there. And Paris was just really expensive, and we knew it was going to take forever. So
This was back when Phil wore a shirt.
yeah.
That's back when Phil was the new guy.
Paris, that's Paris.
Yeah.
So
Was the new guy.
we said, why are we here? So Joe said, well, I've got a place in Ireland, and we can get a studio for next to nothing there. So we said, that's what we need. This is going to take forever to do. We don't need a studio that's costing £300 an hour.
Because you were in Paris. You were in Paris originally. It was costing way too much, and
astronomical. Right? We were staying in the Champs-Élysées in hotel. It's like crazy.
Wow.
And Joe, I was speaking to Joe. Joe said, "Do we need it?" And I said, "No, I've been trying to get a cheap studio. It's like in Paris." And he said, "Well, in Ireland, we can go to Windmill Lane, and we don't even use their main studio. We use a jingle studio." And that's what we did. We went there. And so those pictures were with the free.
Show that photo of Joe getting coffee there.
That was in Paris.
Yeah. That was Paris. Okay. Yeah. So that was Paris there.
Yeah.
The signature do. He's stuck with that one still to today, right? I mean,
yeah, the mullet, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and
He's not as
time
mullety
frame
now.
What year around?
Trying to think. I think it was 86 when I started with them, or 85. So it was around there. I don't know. I'm not sure when the album was released. 87? I can't remember. That was right at the beginning. That was the first year. Well, yeah, before Mutt arrived, the tea thing.
Yes. So tell us that story. You were talking about Rick losing his arm. Yeah. And that was around the time when Mutt came in, right?
Yeah, well...
and it was because of that Mutt came in, or no?
Yeah, I think so. He realized... I don't know. I mean, you'd have to ask Mutt, but I think he realized, well, first of all, we were struggling. And secondly, he felt, everyone felt awful about the whole Rick thing. So he decided, screw it, I'll come in and do it, So that was
he was the one that sort of told Rick that he could do it with only one arm, right?
Yeah. So he went. Yeah, he went to the hospital, and this guy's 21. He's lost his arm.
Wow.
And he said, and this is what's amazing about Mutt. Everything you do with him, you always push the boundaries. You always do something that people go, "What are you doing?" And then later on, it's what everyone else does in the end. So he goes, you could get some electronic triggers, and if you transpose what you do with your, I think it was which arm, left arm, I think it was the one that went. You put that to your foot, then that could be the snare and the kick, and then you've got like the other arm. You can do some cymbal smashes and toms. You put some delays on it, and you can. And Mutt had it all figured out.
And that's exactly what he did, pretty much. Yeah, to this day, really.
They got someone to build the kit. And that was all Rick needed to hear, was he could still play drums.
Wow.
That's all we wanted to know.
Wow. Amazing. And well, I mean, to think about that too, I mean, to take away anything positive from such a horrible, accident, that drum sound almost became, again, synonymous with the latter half of the 80s. I mean, it was just almost, like you wouldn't even have known that was an accident that kind of prompted that. You would think Rick would be a massive inspiration to anybody who had any kind of handicap to continue playing at that level.
No, he is.
It's massive.
He is a big inspiration. He does a lot of, But you think about it, it's crazy. Drummer loses an arm, but if you're a guitarist.
Yeah, then you're in trouble. Yeah, completely.
Right.
Yeah.
The thing is, though, I mean, the funny thing is though, I've never, things cease to amaze me every time I go online. You see a YouTube video of some kid playing with his foot, or some person people. I mean, I remember being a kid and just trying to, perfect the F chord and just going, screw this, and throwing it because it's just too hard. Right. And then you see these people that are playing with their feet, and it is amazing, the obstacles that some people overcome just due to persistence. And I think, Yeah, absolutely. What an inspiration that would be to,
Of course,
to
it's
any
another
musician.
thing to have been playing drums for 21 years or whatever chunk of those years, and then suddenly have that removed from your arsenal. And like you said, we kind of forget how young those guys were. They were really young.
And I'm surprised that there wasn't a segue. I mean, normally that would lead to depression and, possibly, any type of substance abuse. I mean, you're in that kind of position. I mean, the fact that he kind of went right back into it that soon, and it's
they got a guy to design the drums. He was, when we were doing the album, he'd be in we booked another room for him. He'd be practicing, and he'd get this thing together, and then go, Mark, come and check this out. And he was so proud to show how he was doing. And so that was the inspiration. It was
amazing.
I'm going to get back. And I don't know if you know this. I wasn't there, but live. They had, I've forgotten the drummer they had a drummer from the band, can't remember, but they were touring with Leps, but Rick was there with them, and they were doing it together. And then one day the drummer just didn't make it, and they start the show. I think it was like Donington or somewhere, and Rick just does the show, and the band don't realize that the other drummer's not there, and they turn around and it's just Rick doing it.
Wow. And that was that. Yeah.
It was like the audience just stood up.
Of course. Yeah. No, it's amazing. And like you say, after all that tragedy and, trying to make a record once already, and then for that record to go on to be, well, it's one of the biggest of all time, period. Yeah. What a triumph.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Mutt's so focused in that area. He's, it was always about, we have to have 6 singles. That was with anything he did, whether it was Foreigner or whether it was AC/DC, got to have 6 singles.
Yeah.
And you bury the singles. You don't make them like a pop record. It is a pop record, but you bury them. You put the rock tracks in front. But at the end of the day, each time a single comes out, it keeps the album up there.
It does.
And let's not take away from the fact that band has earned my respect time and time over, because it would have been just as easy for them at that point in their career to replace the drummer, and they chose to stick with him, and those guys, I just think that's, the most commendable thing as a band. I mean, that's the definition of being in a band. And it was just, one of those things that.
The other thing, Steve Clark dies, and I think
crazy.
Bill Collins said,
right.
He was about to quit, but they didn't. Yeah. They just,
Right.
Yeah, I can't imagine. They've had a hell of a history, and they're still going. God bless them, sounding as good as ever.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I saw them. Yeah. I hadn't seen them for 30. Corey knows. I hadn't seen them for 30 years, and
wow.
I think, well, the weird thing is, you were just working in the studio, solid. I mean, you're on the next project, and you'd work with bands, and then you'd only see them when they come back, and I just lost touch with them. And then they came to Denver, and I got hold of, well, it was because of I did this article. I never did articles or anything like this about bands or anything to work with, because in those days it was kind of like, you kind of kept it quiet. It was like nowadays everyone's bloody Facebooking.
Yeah.
But then you didn't do that. You didn't take pictures or anything. But Billboard contacted me, and they said, it's 30 years since Hysteria came out. Would you be prepared to do an interview? And I said, I don't do interviews. And then I went, 30 years. And it's like blew my mind. And I phoned Mutt up and I said, they've asked me to do an interview. Should I just ignore it? And he said, oh, no, do it. And I said, well, I have to tell the whole story about it. I'm not going to make, because we did things very controversially, like drums last. He said, no. He said, you've got to pass it by the band, though. If the band don't want it, fine. So I wrote it myself, sent it to Mutt. He said, yeah, that's good. Sent it to Dev. I got Phil Collins' email, and I sent it to him. And he phoned me up and he said, where the fuck have you been? And then we had a great chat for about an hour. It was like talking about the old days. And he said, no, it's great. And I said, well, I can't give this to Billboard unless all the band members approve it. It can't be just you. I don't know if Joe likes it.
Sure.
And I couldn't. Eventually, it's okay now. Rick got hold of me, and Sav got hold of me. So there's 3 of them at least.
Yeah, he is looking very savage there. Yeah.
So So
I'll find that that article, Nigel, and we'll put up a link to that article.
Yeah, you
It's
should
really
do that. I'd
great.
love to read that. Yeah.
I'm just trying to find it here.
Well, and you know, just because obviously we could spend an hour on every album, and you've got such a legacy. Just some of the questions coming in. I mean, just to kind of segue into some of the other bands you were working with.
Yeah.
Was the experience working with Def Leppard, was that kind of what alluded to a lot of the other bands that you worked with in the 80s? I mean, some of the big names like Iron Maiden. I mean, you've done a number of albums with them. Is it?
We were part of a production company. Well, you know, I worked with Zomba, and Zomba was a publishing company that before we even bought the studio, they had signed up all the publishing of AC/DC, Iron Maiden, everyone. They you know, Clive was genius. He was way ahead. And so already we had producers. Martin Birch was a producer for Zomba, and he was producing Iron Maiden. So we'd, you know, we'd bring him into the studios, and that's how I got to work with them, because it was all part of an in-house kind of production thing. So, yeah, I mean, it was a lot to do with Zomba, and it was.
And then, of course, because we always like to hear the great stories, you know, not to take away from the whole, you know, engineering and the audio, but I mean, those bands in the 80s, I mean, we all know, like you said, I mean, kind of similar to what you're talking about with the punk guys. What was it like working with these bands at the height of their careers? I mean, you know, in the middle of the 80s, was any good studio stories you can tell us?
Trying to think. I have studio story. I have to be careful with, like I said, with talking about
the non-disclosure, right?
Ozzy Osbourne. These are safe ones. Like this is in Morgan. So I was working with Gary Moore with Martin Levan in Studio 3, and Ozzy was Chris Tangeries was doing Sabbath in Studio 4. And we were just like, and the thing with Morgan Studios, that they had a bar restaurant, and we used to gather for lunch, and so we'd all like talk with each other, and then we'd go off and do our own projects. And it was a real nice vibe. I think that's something that's lost nowadays. You know, the studio environment isn't that way, I don't think. But so we do joke. You know, we're just stupid kids. You know, we do jokes like a tape op would always say, "You got a C12? I've got one over here. I'll come over and get it." And every studio door had a security camera to see who was going to buzz them in. And I don't know, somehow we balanced this egg something so that when the tape op came in, it hit him on his head or something. I don't know how we did it, but so we got Ozzy's, you know, tape op. So Ozzy said, "Well, got to get him back for that," you know. So he comes over in the afternoon, and he jumps on top of the roof, and he throws stink bombs down the air conditioning unit. And like we're running out of the studio going, you know, we couldn't do anything for us. But yeah, I mean, I tell you, with Morgan Studios, I was tape op, and they became big chief tape op, and Martin Levan became studio manager, and in those days, like I said, you just became a tape op, and they threw you in the deep end, and they go, "Is he still there?" You know, and still alive, okay. So it was a quick learning curve. So Trident students used to have T-boys, and it was a better way of doing it. You know, they didn't throw them in the deep end. You'd make tea first, and you could learn what a tape machine is. And so Mike Levan said, "We're going to get T-boys, and you're the chief engineer, and I want you to interview some guys." So I had this friend, Mark Freegard, who was a tape op with me. We were good friends. And we thought, you were about 19 years old, you know. I go, "Oh, this is great. We're a chief, you know, like we're part of the corporation now. We can interview people." So we were at the top. We had this desk and all this, and we get these young kids coming in, you know, 16, 17 years old. And one of them was Flood, who became famous. Yeah. So we interviewed two guys that day. One was Flood and one was Drought. And they weren't called that then. And anyhow, you could tell when you meet, you know, this Flood actually was I think he was a bass player. He had a small, you know, and he was doing little production things himself. And so we thought, yeah, this guy's got it. So, but then we asked, we're going to go, you know, this could be fun. So he said, "Right, so there's one thing we do have to ask you." And what? Have you ever smoked marijuana? And he goes, you could see me. What kind of question was that? You know, and we're going me both. And he said, and he's looking at it's a recording studio, right? Yeah. And he went, yeah, you got the job. So anyhow, he became great at making tea. He was brilliant. He made too much tea, so they nicknamed him Flood.
That's
And
why
the
it's
other
called
guy,
Flood.
yeah, and the other guy didn't give a shit. He didn't do anything.
Didn't make
And he
any
was drought.
Yeah.
He was drought. Yeah. So it proves that if you're a good tea maker, you know, you go far. And drought, where's he? I don't know.
I love that, you know, tea is a very important part of the English
Exactly.
recording experience.
Exactly.
It's so lost on us over here going,
Well,
like,
I'm sure it's the same with you guys with coffee, right?
exactly, yeah, but no one really, you know, I just think that's really interesting. That actually brings me to, like, how does a guy like yourself end up in America? I mean, what's the process?
Well, it was Zomba again. You know, Zomba was going to expand. It was Jive Records. So I started doing all the early Jive Record stuff, and that's how I ended up doing R&B. But then when I worked with the producers, I'd be working on rock. And then Clive, again, being the genius as he was the one who said rap's going to be big, and no major record label in America wanted to know about rap. There was Run DMC, who was on Jeff Jam. But that was it, you know. And so we started doing rap. We got, you know, Thomas Dolby did the first thing. He wasn't really into rap. He didn't quite like how that ended up at the time. But we got these two guys from New York, or Clive did, and it was called Houdini. And they rapped on top of it.
Yeah.
And we did the record, and it just became an underground club kind of hit thing. So we were doing all this rap stuff as well. So it just basically became very, I could do all different types of things because I would be either working with rock producers like Martin Birch or Mutt, or I'd be doing stuff for Clive. And so.
And that brings up an interesting question as well, because I mean, I know that as a musician, I mean, I guess as a studio musician, you get called in to do various styles of music, and you've got to kind of always just bring your A game. You go from working a large period of your life with, you know, with mostly these rock bands and stuff. And then I'm just reading some of your credentials. You go into something like Baby One More Time. I mean, I guess it's really just kind of a different headspace, right? You still approach it with the same professionalism, but what is the takeaway there?
Well, the hardest one was coming from rock back to R&B, because R&B, they have everything tight and it's all like, you know, and I'd have the cymbals smashing like a rock band, and they're going, hey, cool it. We're doing R&B here, you know. And, but in the end, it's just pop, you know, and hits. And you know, what I used to do all the time, I mean, you know, how do I explain it? When I first started engineering stuff, I always wanted self-approval, like, is this good enough? I was always trying to, and the thing that actually made me realize I could do it was Tim Freeze Green. He'd done this record for Clive, and I was working with him. I was assisting, and it was a pop record, and I can't remember what it was, but they took the phone number from Buckingham Palace and put it on the record, like it's. And Clive said, you can't have that. You know, we're going to get like sued or whatever. We can't have Buckingham Palace. So, and Tim Freeze Green had gone on another project somewhere, and Clive, Nigel, you got to remix it. And I'm going, remix Tim Freeze Green's thing? He's not going to like. So I go in the studio, and I just all day I'm A-Bing between Tim's mix and what I'm doing. I'm trying to get all the panning and the EQ right, and I'm trying to make it sound like Tim's mix. And I eventually get it really close. And I thought, well, if I'm going to do that, then if it is close, if it really is close, I should be able to edit it in. I should be able to edit that part in and tell the difference. So I did. I edited it in, and I thought, I think that's okay. And Martin Levan happened to be walking around, and I told Martin what I did. I said, you know, I don't want to. And he said, what you edited? He said, wow, that's pretty good. And the beauty was now I could deliver the record to Clive. I didn't have to worry about Tim saying I screwed his mix up, because it was all his mix apart from this couple of bar section where the telephone number
You
was.
actually cut the
But-
tape out
Yeah.
and put it
Yeah,
on
yeah.
his master.
Yeah. So
Wow.
So I realized, holy shit, if I can do that, then I actually can mix. I can actually do it.
That's
Wow.
awesome.
And that's what I used to do. I used to compare all the time. I used to put, like, so if I was doing Britney Spears, I put what's current on, listen to it, and then compare mine to it. If it didn't, I'd keep trying to improve it. And I'd even copy ideas. David Bowie would have an amazing drum sound on. I think it was some stuff Clear Mountain was doing. And I go, great, having the drum sound on the thing I'm doing like that. So I'd copy the drum sound. Like.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's obvious you like to critique albums. What's your opinion of Corey's job on the Took records?
Well, I heard the latest thing. No, he's great. It's great. Your stuff, yeah. I heard.
We can take him out of the feed here if you want to talk honestly.
He
Corey's
taught me
in the
everything I
green
know.
room.
So, yeah.
Is it hard to find a good T-boy in America? Let's be honest. Let's get to the.
I don't even know if they know what it is now.
Is it actually hard?
I
Is
think
it
when
hard
you
to
get
get
like
for
they
a
just
T-boy
throw it
now,
in
you might get
the
something
water,
that you weren't expecting.
Exactly. They'll say go to Thailand for that.
Hey, Nigel, let's talk about the Bryan Adams album, Waking Up the Neighbors, because that was, obviously a great record, but it was also the moment in history when Mutt first sees Shania on TV
Yeah.
and starts up a relationship. He's like
Well, I
talking
was-
to her on the phone, and he's saying like, "Yeah, I'm just recording a guy named Brian," and
Some guy.
downplayed the whole thing. She didn't even know who he was or what he had done.
To be honest, I wasn't there for that. I don't think that was on Waking Up the Neighbors. That was the album afterwards.
Oh,
That
really?
was, yeah, because I was on the whole of Waking Up the Neighbors, and yeah, that was before, because that was Waking Up the Neighbors was 91,
Okay.
and I think Shania was probably 90. I don't know, 95, 96. Something.
Yeah, it would have been around then.
Yeah, so
Um,
that would have been the album afterwards. So I wasn't there.
Okay. Okay. So incidentally, I texted with Keith Scott today, and he says to say hi to you. I tried to get him.
No.
I tried to get him to drop in on us today,
Yeah,
but he's
Keith was
he's
great.
got. Yeah, he speaks
was-
highly of you as well.
he was great. Like, it was funny because, he's it's not Vancouver. Where is he from? Is it Vancouver?
He's
I think
Vancouver.
so, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And anyhow, in England in those days, the pub, I thought I'd take him to a pub. Me and Georgina, we took him to a pub in Wimbledon, and it's like Wimbledon in England is so quaint. And on a Sunday, the pubs were only open for 2 hours, so I take him down there, and we're sitting, in the Wimbledon lawn, whatever, and it's amazing, like you had to get the last pint, you could barely get 2 pints in because it was like. And he said, "Oh, I love it here. It's like a sport drinking."
So just out of curiosity, because totally off topic, why only 2 hours on Sunday?
Well, that's with the rule, 12 till 2. Yeah, I mean, it's all
Like in the afternoon or 12 till 2 at
in the
night?
afternoon.
Wow.
In the afternoon,
So your last call?
yeah.
was
So
like,
that's
get
he was
people out of
right.
there
It
by
was
2
like a
o'clock,
sport.
yeah.
You had to get down there.
Just
And-
pound him.
Yeah.
And you mixed Everything I Do, did you?
I didn't. Clear Mountain mixed the thing because Clear Mountain was his guy.
Did you record that?
I recorded. Yeah, I recorded. The
So
whole
were you there
album.
when Keith recorded his guitar parts for that song?
Yeah.
So that's pretty epic, right?
Yeah. Well, the funny one was because it was what's the anyhow it was the guy who was doing Robin Hood. He'd done all the musical parts for it. And
Okay.
I've forgotten his name. He's passed away, and he
Michael
famous
Kamen.
guy. Michael Kamen. And
Good one.
he had his own musical director, piano player, and all this. And so it was so fun. it was hilarious. So he comes in and he's real confident, and of course you're working with Mutt, and so Mutt's trying to create the song. It's all from scratch, and he's trying to go. He's telling him play this way, that way, and we're doing it to MIDI. So he's not doing it on an acoustic piano. We're doing it on a piano sound, recording it to a sequencer. so that this would be the bed with a click track for us to put the rest of the stuff, everything, guitars, everything. And so this guy's used to with like Cayman, like banging it down in like 10 minutes, a couple of takes, So he's on this thing for like 5 hours, and he's like nonplussed. He cannot believe he's 5 hours to do this piano part, and it's MIDI, And me and Phil, he was the programmer at the time. We're kind of like laughing at him. We've seen this before, And Mutt said, "Yeah, that's great. It's good for a guide, anyhow." And the guy just, because Mutt had already decided he was going to use Bill Payne out of Little Feat to do the piano.
Oh no!
And the guy was just, it was just. But we're used to that every day with Mutt. It was like nothing new. But he had it. It was hilarious.
Well, so Nigel, that being said, you've worked on so many hits, and I mean, so many of the biggest songs that have ever come out. Two-part question for you, and feel free if you don't want to answer this. Any song that you were working on that became a hit that you didn't think was going to, like sitting there working and going, I can't believe, we're spending all this time on this, and then obviously went on to be a hit. And second part, a song that surprised you that did become a huge hit that you were working on. Any big moments in your career that stand out like that?
It's hard because, I'm trying to think. There are a lot of times, and it sounds like, what a hit is. But I did actually, when I was working on stuff, I go, yeah. I mean, like, for instance, Everything I Do, when it was finished, we always thought that was going to be a hit. And then I heard it in a shop, what it's like on a crappy speaker.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going, it sounds really slow. It sounds really, I thought maybe it's not going to be a hit, And you always had confidence when you were working on a Mutt thing because he was so, like, focused. And then it did become a hit, and it became massive in England. And it was good. Oh, yeah, that was a hit. But there was a bit of doubt then.
I always knew it was going to be that way.
Yeah. But a lot of the times, no. I mean, it's hard. I don't think I worked on. No, I mean, again, I worked on tons of stuff that wasn't a hit. So it's not like you're not working on hits all the time. But a lot of the time, I was pretty thinking, that could be a hit. I'll tell you one thing though, which you might.
So one song that you thought might have been a hit that didn't become, like, is that what you're saying?
Well,
like,
I tell you, like the thing that's interesting, and it was working with Clive and Billy Ocean. They do Billy Ocean stuff, and we have a pretty clear thing. Yeah, this is going to be the hit. This is the song, and Clive would go, well, we're submitting that one, but we're doing two others. And I'm going, why? It's pretty obvious. This is the hit, right? And he said, yeah, well, maybe to you or maybe to me, but guess what? We have to sell this to the radio stations, and you have pluggers. You have these guys who are professional. That's what they do. They plug records, and they get a reputation for themselves. And they, last thing I did was David Bowie or whatever. So they would get, these top pluggers. They might get 5 or 6 records. And they grade them themselves. And if you only give them the one you like, but they don't like it, you might be fourth behind David Bowie or someone. Right. So you have to let them choose. You give them, you choose, and then if they choose and they like it, they're more likely to plug your record. So it's a real interesting world. It's
quite political.
Yeah. But again, it's all about people. And that's what I learned with Mutt. We'd spend ages on something for days, and then someone would come into the control room and we'd chatting and everything, and we'd play it, and then he'd go, and Mutt said, I don't think this is right. And I go, what do you mean? He said, well, he wasn't that impressed. And I'm going, well, what does it matter about him? And he said, he's the general public. Not us.
Wow.
And so he was always watching for reactions. Yeah. So, and it's true. The general, really because people used to believe you could sell a record. You can't. If the people don't like it, you can plug it as much as you want. But if people don't like it,
that's absolutely true. Yeah.
Hey, I've always wanted to ask you this question about the song "Gods of War," the Def Leppard song.
Yeah.
Because you mixed that, right?
Yeah.
So it's my favorite Def Leppard song, and but I've always thought the one thing that I would have changed in that song is I would have got No, the mix is great. I always thought that it should have gotten to the chorus sooner, right? Because the verses are so long, and it gets in the first verse, and then it starts the second verse again, right?
Yeah.
And it builds that tension. I love it. But was there ever any talk about that that you know of?
No, the thing is, it was very. You see, we were doing pop records. That's what they were.
Yeah.
They weren't rock records.
Right.
But you had to be careful. If you come out with, Animal and Love Bites and all the first few tracks, everyone's going to say, that's not a rock record. They sold out. It's a pop record.
Oh.
So Gods of War and Women, which were like, Women was like 7 minutes long.
It was that rock
meant
track.
to disguise the fact that this wasn't a pop record.
Ah,
And Gods of War was the same thing. You wanted this long sort of rock thing, and the rock guys got into it. Meanwhile, a couple of songs later, you stick one of your hits in. So even the album order is very important, because you're trying to set it up that even though we know this is a pop record, so the fans who despise that, no, this is a rock record. We'll start with Women and
right.
That
I
album
can't
is
imagine-
essentially a greatest hits record, is what it is.
I can't imagine that arrangement being anything like as if Mutt didn't go over a fine tooth comb of the entire arrangement. That's
just
completely
knowing
on
the way
purpose.
he is. It was totally calculated, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So thank you for
Pyromania
clearing
was
that
the
up.
same.
So Corey, you're questioning Mutt's ability as a producer here. Is that what I'm hearing?
Uh-oh.
Don't start that, Darren. Don't start that.
Let me tell
Well,
you, Gene.
Yeah. Now, Nigel, didn't you also say that Thomas Dolby did the keyboards on Hysteria?
No, he did the keyboards on
Pyromania.
Nope. Yes, Pyromania.
Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
really? Wow.
Yeah.
But
Interesting.
he didn't want to put his name on it, right?
He didn't know. Well, Thomas Dolby was, years later, everyone wants to be involved in success. Yeah, but at the time, Thomas was trying to carve his thing, and
Sure, yeah.
I don't want to be known as the rock. You know what I mean? So it was
The
he
heavy
wanted
metal
his
guy.
vision to be
Yeah.
Thomas Dolby, which was different. Yeah,
Did he have an alias that he used?
I think there was an alias on it. Yeah, I can't
Dolby
remember what it is.
Thomas, I think it was.
There is. I think there is an alias. Yeah, I think there is. Yeah, but I can't remember what it was. Yeah.
Science! Remember that song?
Science.
Yeah.
I love that stuff.
Yeah.
I love that stuff.
He was he had a huge run too, old Thomas Dolby. Yeah.
Absolutely. We could keep you for hours and talking about this, but I mean, I'm sure you're a busy guy, and of course, we love hearing all the stories, and we'll have to have you on again, and
There's gonna have
discuss
to be a
some of
part
the
two.
stuff. Yeah,
Part two.
definitely.
Waffle on the whole time.
Well, you just have too much of a career to cover in the hour and a bit
Yeah.
that we usually do.
Heartbeat
this
City
for, so,
alone is going to be a whole other episode.
Yeah, we haven't gone there yet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
I
much.
mean, but
And Billy Ocean, all that stuff. That would be great to talk about.
Billy Ocean, absolutely, yeah.
Did he ever
But I mean,
consider Willie Ocean? That would have been a good name. Willie Ocean.
William Ocean.
His
Will
name probably
Ocean.
was
yeah.
William, actually. Yeah.
I would imagine, yeah. It's funny that you brought that up, though, because when you mentioned earlier about never really seeing anybody unless they came in the studio, because I remember a million times in my life I've recorded a record and you get real tight with the whole family
Exactly.
group of it. And then you go, I'm walking out of the studio. It's like, great hanging out, bro. See you later. And you leave. And I realize as I'm leaving, somebody else is loading into that room. And these guys just stay there without sun, and just kind of work through the night making magic. And I just thought, wow. So guys like yourself, is it tough to have a family life? Is that what eventually you have to kind of step
In those
out of
days, it was a nightmare. Yeah.
Yeah, because you don't have any free time at all. Yeah.
Yeah. in those
Well, but you
days,
said you met your wife working on one of the records, right?
Well,
So-
that was the funny thing about it is, so you worked all the time. I mean, literally every day you would work. You might get a week off in a year, because the studio was way too expensive to be sat there idle, and there was only a few people. So you were, and on Def Leppard, when Mutt decided to do it, he, because he'd made this decision that he was going to cool it, have a break. And then when he came on, he said, okay, I'll do it, but I'm having weekends off, because he was building a house.
Sure.
He wasn't building it from scratch. He was renovating it. And he's putting a studio in the house, which is where we ended up mixing the record. And he needed to be at the weekends to organize this, and he just wanted a break. He didn't want to do it like we used to. So that's the first time in my life.
That seems like a fairly civil way to work.
Yeah.
I mean, like you say, that kind of like, because I went through that for a while where I'm just going to get into making records and then I won't have to go on the road anymore. I can spend time with my family. Then you're in a studio for, 14, 15, 16 hours a day. And
You're like Brent Fitz right now, stuck in the corner in the chokey.
Yeah.
exactly. Making records.
Didn't-
Well, thank you so much, Nigel.
I need to
Beside me, by
I
the
need
way,
to
guys.
just expand upon that a little bit about the family thing, because wasn't it because of Mike's wife literally coming in and pulling him away from the board that you were tagged to do the last half of the Hysteria mixes?
Yeah. That was
Because she had never seen him in so long, and he was getting so stressed and sleep deprived that she actually came and pulled him away from the console.
Yeah. The same
Jeez,
thing
Louise.
happened on Pyromania. It wasn't that. It was on Pyromania. It was coming up to Christmas, and Mike had to get back to Australia, which took a couple of days. So
Yeah.
he went, and we had to get this. So I was plunked in, and I did the last 5 tracks on that.
Wow.
Amazing. Well,
Unbelievable.
you definitely have a career that deserves a part 2, if not part 3 as well. But yeah, we definitely want to thank you for coming on the show today. And, it's been a blast, and we could listen for hours. And,
It was
we
like a walk down memory lane for me. Thank you.
yeah, absolutely, for sure. Want to thank everybody for tuning in today. We've got next week coming up. Who do we got?
I think it's Nick Walsh from Slick Toxic and Moxie. Is that not correct?
Okay,
I
so
gotta
be
keep
sure
track
to
of that.
be sure to tune in next Tuesday. Sure to be a hell of a time.
Ooh. It's like you've done your research.
Waiting for the snare cymbal there.
Yeah. Get up.
Corey, were you going to say something?
I said Badoop Pish.
Oh,
There
I
it
thought you
is,
said-
yes.
Oh, there you go.
Kettle of fish.
Wasn't
Yeah.
loud enough. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's been
thanks.
great, guys. Really.
Thanks to
enjoyed it.
everybody for tuning in. We'll see you next Tuesday. Once again, Nigel, thanks for joining us and entertaining us with your stories. And we'll be sure to have you on again, and we'll talk because there's just too much to cover in the short period of time we have. So,
Seriously.
thanks, guys, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
Bye, everybody. Thanks,
Hey.
Nigel.
Bye. Bye.